The Galactic Concordium was an institution older than most civilizations could imagine, a council of ancient, advanced species governing the galaxy through a complex web of traditions and rules. To the uninitiated, these protocols symbolized peace and harmony. To insiders, they were a labyrinth of control. Only those who adhered to these polite customs could hope to thrive. And now, after humanity's breakthrough into faster-than-light travel, Earth had been summoned to join. For Earth, this was a moment of triumph. A delegation was quickly assembled, combining humanity's brightest minds, scientists, diplomats, and military leaders, all eager to represent the homeworld. The invitation itself was a grand affair, delivered via a shimmering projection of an alien ambassador with eyes like molten silver and a voice that reverberated in frequencies both heard and felt. "You are invited to the council. Prepare yourselves for enlightenment and responsibility." The anticipation was palpable as Earth's delegation reviewed the Concordium's protocols. Dr. Elena Ruiz, an esteemed linguist and cultural analyst, pored over the manuals provided, thousands of pages of ceremonial minutiae. "This isn't diplomacy," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "It's theater. Every gesture, every word must follow a script." Beside her, Captain Amirchan leaned back, arms crossed, his expression skeptical. "This isn't theater, document. It's bureaucracy on steroids. You don't keep people in line with guns when you can do it with endless red tape." Elena glanced up, her sharp eyes narrowing. "They've spent millennia refining this system. It's subtle but effective. Break one rule, and you're branded uncivilized. Break too many, and you're isolated." The briefing room buzzed with tension as they continued their preparation. The Concordium's rules were absurdly detailed, seating arrangements based on planetary resource quotas, greeting rituals involving at least 3 forms of verbal acknowledgement, and a ban on direct statements unless preceded by 2 rounds of indirect commentary. Even dining etiquette was a minefield: fork-like appendages only, no liquids near clawed species, and no eye contact during meals. "It's like they're daring us to fail," Chin said, shaking his head. "Do they actually want new members?" "They want new subordinates," Elena replied flatly. "The question is, how far are we willing to go along with it?" When the delegation finally arrived at the council chamber, they were met with overwhelming spectacle. The chamber itself was colossal, with tiers of translucent platforms suspended in midair, each occupied by alien delegates whose forms ranged from crystalline figures to amorphous blobs of light. A low hum of communication filled the space as languages interwove in an unceasing chorus, filtered through translation devices. The humans were directed to their assigned platform, a small, unassuming space far from the central dais. Elena noticed how the platform's sizes correlated with perceived influence, their own allocation a subtle reminder of Earth's low standing. Still, she stood tall as the delegation took their places, determined not to let the alien council intimidate them. A figure emerged from the central dais, Counselor Karith, a towering being whose scaled skin shimmered with iridescent hues. His multifaceted eyes surveyed the newcomers with calculated disinterest. When he spoke, his voice was both commanding and cold. "Humans of Earth, you stand before the Galactic Concordium as petitioners. Your advancement into faster-than-light travel has earned you this audience. Yet progress demands discipline. Are you prepared to abide by our ways?" Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. "We are honored to be here and eager to contribute to the Concordium's mission of peace. However, we believe that collaboration must be built on mutual respect and understanding." Karith's gaze hardened. "Respect is demonstrated through adherence to tradition. Traditions older than your existence." The exchange set the tone for what was to come. Throughout the session, the humans faced subtle slights and impossible demands. The delegation was chastised for arriving out of sequence, though the instructions given were deliberately vague. They were reprimanded for failing to use an esoteric form of address, one that required weeks of study to master. And when they attempted to explain themselves, their words were drowned in a wave of bureaucratic condescension. Captain Chen's patience wore thin. "With all due respect," he interjected during one particularly convoluted reprimand, Does anyone here actually care about the practicalities of working together? Or is this just an elaborate hazing ritual? A stunned silence followed. Elena felt the air grow tense, but she didn't flinch. Chen's words had cut through the charade, and though it risked alienating their hosts, it also exposed an uncomfortable truth. Some of the delegates shifted in their seats, their movements betraying unease. Karitha's voice sliced through the tension. Practicality without tradition is chaos. Your insolence is noted. But Elena saw something else, a flicker of agreement in the eyes of a neighboring delegate, Veltol. The slender, bird-like alien leaned slightly forward, observing the humans with something approaching curiosity. It was a small crack in the facade, but one that Elena filed away for later. As the session concluded, the humans were left with a clear message: conform or face isolation. Yet as they regrouped back on their transport, their resolve only hardened. They want us to play their game, Elena said, her tone sharp. But if we do, we lose. This isn't about diplomacy, it's about submission. And if we refuse? One of the junior diplomats asked. Chen smirked. Then we show them what humans are really made of. The chamber was filled with a murmur of anticipation as the council reconvened. A sea of alien faces turned toward the human delegation. The humans had not conformed, a fact that had not gone unnoticed. Whispers of defiance rippled through the Concordium, and the atmosphere was charged with an almost predatory curiosity. Dr. Elena Rees took her place at the forefront of the human delegation, flanked by Captain Amirchin and the other representatives. They had reviewed their options during the brief recess, and the consensus was clear: they would not capitulate. The Concordium's protocols were more than archaic formalities. They were a mechanism to entrench power, a way to keep new species perpetually subordinate. The session began with Councillor Karith presiding, his iridescent scales catching the ambient light as he addressed the assembly. Humans of Earth, your earlier behavior has been noted. Now let us proceed with the matter of your formal induction. You have been provided with the necessary guidelines. We trust there will be no further deviations. Karitha's tone carried the weight of centuries of authority, but it only hardened the human's resolve. Elena stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Councillor Karith, esteemed members of the Concordium, we have reviewed the guidelines thoroughly. While we respect the traditions of this council, we believe they require re-evaluation to foster genuine collaboration. A ripple of disbelief coursed through the chamber. Veltol, seated among the middle-tier species, tilted their head, their beak clicking softly in what could have been amusement or interest. Karitha's expression, however, betrayed no humor. Re-evaluation? Humans, you overstep your place. These traditions have maintained galactic stability for millennia. Captain Chin, standing slightly behind Elena, stepped forward. Stability for whom? His voice was steady, but it carried an edge. From what we've seen, these rules benefit those who've been here the longest. They're designed to keep newcomers at a disadvantage. The room fell silent. Karitha's gaze bore into Chen, and his response came slow and deliberate. Your words reek of ignorance. Do you presume to rewrite the laws of the galaxy before you have even learned to walk among the stars? Elena raised her hand slightly, a signal for Chen to hold back. She met Karitha's glare without flinching. We don't presume, Counselor. We propose. The strength of a council lies not in adherence to tradition but in its ability to adapt. Humanity offers a framework based on transparency, efficiency, and mutual respect. Karitha's laugh was a sharp, unnatural sound, echoing through the chamber. You claim respect, yet you defy us. This is arrogance, not diplomacy. The murmur of voices grew louder, but this time, there was no uniform condemnation. Among the delegates, some remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Others exchanged furtive glances. Veltol leaned forward slightly, their interest visibly piqued. Elena noticed and pressed on. We are not here to defy for the sake of defiance. But neither are we here to submit without reason. The galaxy is vast and diverse. Shouldn't our systems reflect that diversity instead of suppressing it? A delegate from a distant platform, a gelatinous being whose form shimmered like liquid silver, spoke for the first time. Your words are bold, human. Boldness can be dangerous. But it can also be necessary, Elena countered. Do we truly believe that clinging to old ways will solve the challenges of tomorrow? Karith raised a clawed hand, silencing the growing murmur. Enough. This council does not debate its traditions with children. His gaze swept across the chamber. The humans' defiance has made their position clear. If they refuse to adhere to our ways, then their place among us must be reconsidered. The veiled threat hung in the air. Vel-Tol chose this moment to speak, their voice a melodic trill that carried through the chamber. Perhaps the humans raise a valid point, Counselor. The strength of a council is indeed its ability to adapt. The reaction was immediate. Some delegates turned to Vel-Tol in shock, others whispered among themselves. Karith's eyes narrowed. Do you suggest we abandon the principles that have guided us for eons? Vel-Tol's feathers ruffled slightly, a sign of defiance in their species. I suggest that we examine whether those principles still serve their purpose. The humans are not the first to question them, nor will they be the last. Elena seized the moment. Counselor Karith, we are not enemies of the Concordium. We seek partnership. But true partnership cannot exist without equality. Karith's voice rose, his authority unmistakable. Equality is earned, not demanded. And respect is mutual, not imposed. Chen interjected, his tone sharp but measured. The tension in the chamber was palpable. Karith's claws tapped against the armrest of his chair, his expression a mask of barely contained disdain. Very well, he said at last. If humanity insists on this course, the consequences are yours to bear. The Concordium will deliberate on your future. Until then, you remain observers. The session adjourned abruptly, the council's delegates dispersing in a flurry of activity. Elena, Chen, and the rest of the delegation returned to their quarters, their expressions a mix of frustration and determination. As the door closed behind them, Chen let out a low whistle. That could have gone worse. Elena sank into a chair, her mind racing. It's not over. We've sown doubt, but doubt isn't enough. We need allies. Chen nodded, his gaze hard. And we need to be ready. Karith isn't going to let this slide. He'll push back. Elena looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Let him. Humanity has never been afraid of a fight. The ultimatum came the next morning, delivered in a tone as cold and clinical as the Concordium's traditions themselves. Humanity had 2 cycles to reconsider its position. Failure to comply would result in Earth's designation as a non-cooperative entity, a euphemism for total exclusion from galactic affairs, including trade, resources, and diplomatic protections. Dr. Elena Rees read the official statement aloud to the team. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the ship's systems. Captain Amirchan broke the quiet, his voice sharp. So they're drawing a line. Guess we'll have to show them we're not backing down. Elena set the tablet aside, her expression unreadable. This isn't just a line. It's a warning shot. If we don't play their game, they'll make an example of us. We're already the example, Chen countered. The real question is how far they're willing to go. And how far we're willing to push. The group's discussion was interrupted by a transmission request. It was Vel-Tol, the alien diplomat who had subtly supported Earth in the council chamber. Their image flickered to life, feathers gleaming with subtle iridescence, eyes locked on Elena. Humans, your defiance has sparked interest. Elena leaned forward. Interest? Or trouble? Both, Vel-Tol admitted. Karith and his allies see you as a threat to the established order. But there are those among us, species tired of being silenced, who see an opportunity in your defiance. They are watching closely. What do they need to see to move? Elena asked, her voice calm but probing. They need proof you can endure, Vel-Tol replied. And that you're not alone. The line cut off, leaving the delegation with more questions than answers. But the message was clear. Humanity needed to solidify its position, and fast. Within hours, Elena and Chen had convened with their team, outlining a bold strategy. The first step was reaching out to the disenfranchised species Vel-Tol had alluded to. Using encrypted channels, they began transmitting messages to lower-tier members of the Concordium, species whose voices were often drowned out by the powerful elite. The messages were simple. Humanity proposed a new framework, one built on fairness and mutual cooperation. Join us, and together we can reshape the Concordium. The responses were hesitant at first. Many feared retribution from Kareth and his allies, but a few dared to reply. One of the first was the Scalari, a species of crystalline entities who had long been relegated to resource-gathering roles despite their advanced technological capabilities. Their envoy's words were cautious but hopeful. "We have endured their condescension for centuries. If you are truly committed to change, we may listen." Meanwhile, Earth's delegation also turned its attention inward, preparing for the possibility of a direct confrontation. Chen worked tirelessly with his military advisors, ensuring that Earth's limited fleet could demonstrate a show of strength if needed. "We're not here to pick a fight," he reminded his team. "But if they push us, we'll push back." The turning point came unexpectedly. During a routine session, Kareth unveiled his next move, a proposal to dispatch a Concordium fleet to Earth for observation and compliance enforcement. The euphemism was thinly veiled, and the message was clear: Earth would be brought to heel, one way or another. Elena stood to respond, her voice steady. "Counselor Kareth, is this how the Concordium fosters peace? By threatening those who seek dialogue?" Kareth's expression betrayed nothing. "Peace requires order, and order requires adherence to tradition. Your species has demonstrated neither." Before Elena could reply, another voice spoke up. It was Vel-Tol. "Counselor Kareth, perhaps Earth's proposal warrants further discussion. Their ideas may be unorthodox, but unorthodox solutions often arise in times of stagnation." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, some supporting Vel-Tol, others backing Kareth's hardline stance. It was the opening humanity had been waiting for. Elena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "We understand your concerns, Counselor Kareth. But fear of change is not an excuse to stifle progress. Humanity stands ready to work with those who seek a better future." The session ended in chaos, but the seeds of division had been sown. Over the next few days, the human delegation worked tirelessly, holding clandestine meetings with sympathetic species and building what would become the foundation of a coalition. Vel-Tol acted as a go-between, their position within the middle-tier species granting them access to key figures without drawing too much suspicion. As the deadline loomed, tensions within the Concordium reached a breaking point. Kareth escalated his rhetoric, accusing Earth of inciting rebellion. He called for an emergency session to decide humanity's fate, a move clearly intended to isolate and intimidate the humans. But Elena and Chen remained steadfast. "We're not isolated," Elena said quietly as they prepared for the session. "Not anymore." On the day of the emergency session, the human delegation entered the chamber flanked by representatives from several species, the Scalari, the enigmatic HFY, and even a faction of the once neutral Vrain. It was a coalition that, while small, carried enough weight to send a clear message: humanity was not alone. Kareth's expression darkened as the session began, but Elena didn't give him the chance to control the narrative. "Counselors," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Humanity came here to join, not to divide. But unity cannot exist without equity. The traditions you hold so dear have served their purpose, but they must evolve. We are not the first to see this, and we will not be the last." Vel-Tol added their voice to the chorus, addressing the assembly with measured confidence. "The question before us is not whether Earth conforms, but whether this council can adapt to a changing galaxy. Clinging to the past will only ensure our irrelevance." The chamber was divided, the lines of allegiance drawn more sharply than ever. As the debate raged on, one thing became clear: humanity's defiance had sparked a movement, one that could no longer be ignored. The emergency session began with an air of finality, as though the decision had already been made. Counselor Kareth presided with a sense of triumph, his gaze sweeping the chamber, as if daring anyone to oppose him. The stakes were clear: humanity's fate, and perhaps the fate of the Concordium itself, would be decided here. Dr. Elena Rees stood at the center of the human delegation, her expression calm but resolute. She had anticipated this moment, and prepared for it meticulously. Beside her, Captain Amirchin stood with his characteristic quiet intensity, ready for any contingency. The coalition they had forged in the preceding days was present, though not overtly aligned. The room buzzed with a palpable tension as the session began. Caritha's voice was a weapon, sharp and deliberate. "Humans of Earth, you have disregarded every tradition of this council. You have refused guidance, rejected protocol, and now you seek to disrupt the very fabric of our unity. The time has come to determine your place, or lack thereof, within this assembly." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and damning. Elena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence. "Councillor Carith, with respect, unity built on fear and subjugation is not unity. It is compliance, and compliance is fragile." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some in agreement, others in disdain. Caritha's eyes narrowed, his tone icy. "And you, with your insolence, believe you know better than the civilizations that have upheld peace for millennia?" Elena didn't waver. "We believe that peace without justice is no peace at all. Tradition should serve the people, not the other way around. What humanity proposes is not rebellion but reform." Her words sparked a response from Veltol, who rose from their platform, feathers shimmering. "Councillor Carith, perhaps it is time we listen. Humanity is not the first to question our methods, nor will they be the last. The dissent they represent will not vanish if we silence them. It will only grow." Carith slammed a clawed hand onto his platform, his composure slipping for the first time. "This is not dissent, it is chaos. And chaos is the enemy of progress." The chamber erupted into debate. Delegates argued passionately, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of languages and tones. The divide was unmistakable. The old guard, led by Carith, clung to tradition, while a growing contingent of younger or marginalized species began to voice their frustrations. Elena let the chaos simmer for a moment before speaking again, her voice firm but measured. "Councillors, humanity did not come here to divide. We came here to contribute. But we cannot do so within a framework that denies us the very equality this council claims to uphold." Caritha's voice cut in, his disdain palpable. "Equality must be earned. Your arrogance blinds you to the centuries of sacrifice that built this council. And yet those sacrifices have created a system where only the powerful thrive," Elena replied. "How many voices in this chamber have gone unheard because they did not have the resources to navigate your traditions? How many potential allies have been turned away because they refused to bow to outdated hierarchies?" Her words landed with visible impact. Delegates exchanged uneasy glances, some nodding subtly. It was Veltol who broke the silence. "The humans raise a valid point. We claim to be a united galaxy, yet unity is not what I see here. I see factions. I see fear. Perhaps it is not humanity that threatens us, but our unwillingness to evolve." Carith rose from his seat, his towering form radiating fury. "Enough of this," he thundered. "This council will not be manipulated by upstarts and fools. Humanity has sown discord and defied our laws. The punishment is clear: expulsion and isolation." The chamber fell silent. Caritha's words carried the weight of finality, and for a moment, it seemed the decision had been made. But before Carith could move to formalize the vote, Captain Chen stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. "With all due respect, Councillor Carith, Earth isn't as alone as you think." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Then, one by one, representatives from humanity's coalition stood. The Scalari, their crystalline forms refracting light into dazzling rainbows. The HFY, whose serpentine elegance masked a fierce intelligence. Even the cautious Vrain stepped forward, their presence a quiet but powerful statement. Caritha's expression darkened as the coalition made its presence known. Chin continued, his tone unwavering. These species, and others, have chosen to stand with us. Not because we forced them, but because they see what we see, a council that needs to change if it's going to survive. Elena stepped in, her voice carrying a finality that matched Karitha's earlier proclamation. Counselor Karith, humanity's defiance isn't chaos. It's a mirror. And what you see in that reflection isn't us, it's the cracks in your foundation. The room erupted again, but this time the tide had shifted. Delegates who had remained neutral began to murmur in agreement. The old guard found itself outnumbered, its grip on the council visibly slipping. Karith, realizing the momentum had turned, made one last attempt to seize control. This council will not be dictated to by newcomers. If you side with humanity, you risk everything we have built. Veltola's voice rang out, clear and resolute. Perhaps it is time to risk everything if it means building something better. The chamber fell silent once more, the weight of Veltola's words settling over the assembly. Karith, for all his bluster, seemed to deflate, his arguments crumbling under the weight of a shifting consensus. The vote was called. One by one, delegates cast their decisions. When the results were tallied, the verdict was clear: humanity would remain, not as subordinates, but as equal members of a newly restructured concordium. As the session adjourned, Elena and Chin exchanged a glance, exhausted but victorious. Humanity had not only secured its place among the stars but had also ignited a movement that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come.